I think anyone who's concerned about the future of our democracy, anyone who's concerned about living in this world right now has to care about the trans struggle, because at the end of the day, what we're fighting for is the ability to choose and live your own life.
Because we are connected by our resilience, by our unbreakable spirits.
I think some of the most, salient things that we hear over and over again are that trans kids are getting surgical interventions as part of some experimental treatment for gender dysphoria. This is not true. There are no people who are receiving surgeries to treat gender dysphoria when they're young children. For example, we often, when there's a headline about trans healthcare related to minors, there will be an image of an operating room to connect in people's mind the idea that what we're talking about is surgical, when a lot of times what we're talking about is just affirming how a young person dresses or identifies.
What we're seeing is other people's projections about us are prioritized over our actual lives.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to actually regard the lived experiences of trans and non-binary people. We have all the data that shows us time and time again that we're more likely than our cis counterparts to experience workplace discrimination, houselessness, that we're more likely to be denied healthcare, experience physical and sexual violence. And yet, there's this production of us as these dangerous, violent entities, which goes directly against the actual statistics that we have.
Trans kids belong in sports. We will strike down every single one of these bills because trans people are resilient.
We are seeing hundreds of proposed bills being introduced every year now, attempting to restrict the ability of trans people to access healthcare, restricting the ability of educators to talk about history, to name the truth of the world. We're seeing more and more bills that are banning trans people from sports, from locker rooms, from restrooms. And all of this, of course, we know is part of a larger effort to really banish us from public life generally, and really just to banish us altogether.
We can agree to disagree unless the root of our disagreement is in my right to exist.
And when we look at the most perhaps insidious laws that have already passed, we're headed to a place where states around the country are criminalizing the healthcare that every major medical association in the United States supports for trans people.
They're actually even trying to make it so that you can't challenge gender at all. And I think it's really important to connect the dots here for people, that the goal has always been about disappearing trans, intersex, and non-binary people.
We're here! They're gonna make room for us!
We have been told to be silent for too long.
It's difficult to live in this world as a trans person because at a fundamental level, discrimination against you can exist when people don't think that you exist. So because they don't think that we're real, then nothing that we're going through is real.
I am escaping this country's ideology of what a woman is supposed to be.
If we let this type of erosion occur in the context of trans people, it leads quite far into the erosion for many, many other people. And it is not just about trans people, because it is about the power of the state to limit our ability to realize our full identities and our bodily autonomy. We've seen it with the reversal of Roe v. Wade. We are going to see it again and again with erosions on people's rights that they thought were very well settled. And I think the sports example is a perfect one. You have these lawmakers who stand up in legislative hearings talking about how important it is to defend and invest in women's sports, lawmakers that have never once invested in pay equity for women athletes, for women's coaches, that have never once invested in girls' sports programs in their states, all of a sudden saying this is the main issue that they care about. So what they're doing is creating an apparatus of scrutiny over the bodies of athletes who are women and girls in women and girls sports and policing them. And we've already heard one example in Utah where some girl won a competition and the first reaction from the opponents was to say, I want to see her birth certificate. I want her to undergo genetic testing. That is where we're heading. That is the history of sex regulation in sport. To look at any athlete who is seen as not feminine enough, almost always going to be Black athletes in this country, and then start to scrutinize and test and regulate their bodies. And that's what this is about. It is about the same lawmakers who are banning abortion, who are limiting access to resources for communities, who are trying to censor educational curricula, now going after the ability of all women and girls to thrive in sports.
It's a boomerang effect, right? Like, They're trying to see what they can get away with.
Exactly.
It's a slippery slope. These legislative and judicial attacks on trans people are actually creating a culture that's going to impede and invade on everyone's bodily autonomy. I think anyone who's concerned about the future of our democracy has to care about the trans struggle, because at the end of the day, what we're fighting for is the ability to choose and live your own life. There's rising economic inequality in this country. People feel a deep sense that they can't live a good life. And when people have that kind of sorrow, they're looking for an easy culprit to blame it on. It's easier to blame trans people than it is to actually hold your own politicians accountable.
There is this deep-seated anxiety that if things are changing, if the world seems unpredictable, there has to be something we can control. And I think the trans person, the way the trans body is figured in society is as something that is a threat. I think trans people, I think we offer this beautiful example of how we can control and determine our destinies, our bodies, our identities. And so we cause a lot of anxiety for people.
We make freedom real. We make autonomy real. We make healing real. We make individuality real. We make beauty real. And I think that's why they target us, is because it's easier to believe that freedom is a hypothetical.
To those who are still with us, we see you. We respect you, we love you, and we will keep fighting alongside you.
What is so consistent when I observe trans life across the world is an insistence on pursuing joy. When you come from a community that is so often harassed and tormented, joy can feel like a luxury. But I know that in my life, the only way that I can continue going is when I remember, oh wait, we come from a long and sacred legacy of people who lived impossible lives, who the world tried every attempt to make us obsolete, and yet we did the opposite of that. We made ourselves glamorous and fabulous and flamboyant and loud and vocal.
I think if anything can come from this moment and the moments moving forward, it's exactly what you say, which is to draw upon those beautiful legacies, those loud, those vibrant, those extra legal legacies of power building and caretaking and joy experience collectively. That's gonna be the path forward. It has been bad before, it will be bad again, and the consistent truth in all of those times is that trans people existed, trans people found a way to care for each other, and trans people experience joy and fabulousness. And that is what we bring into these next years of struggle.